Welcome to our webinar today on Density's people counting platform. Today, we're going to talk a little about Density and who we are to give you some context. Then we're going to be talking about the applications for people counting. And we have people join from different industries in this webinar. We have some people from education, workplaces. But what we have in common in this webinar today is large amounts of real estate and occupants that matter that are using that. So we're going to talk a little about the value that Density provides in that context. We'll take your questions after a short demo, and please feel free to use this as a resource, so ask questions along the way. There should be a folder at the top of the bottom of your screen, a little queue, and you can ask questions along the way, either anonymously or with your name. A little bit about us at Density. Our mission is to improve the efficiency, security, and occupant experience of all of our customers' buildings and real estate. And we were founded in 2014 by a pretty promising founding team that I've been lucky to know over the past few years from NASA, Genentech, Microsoft, Apple, and Stanford. We're actually based in SF, but we have a manufacturing facility in Syracuse, which is pretty cool considering how long we've been around, that we've been able to do so much of this. Is really the quality of our team. And I'm on the marketing team. And so I'm going to share with you some of the different things that I've learned from our conversations with our customers and across our industries. So what do we do at Density? We have the most advanced people counting sensor. Now, the thing to know is that this sensor, it's installed above a threshold or a doorway, and it's measuring as people are entering and exiting. But it's not a camera, so it's not capturing any person identifiable information. It's just measuring how many people are entering and exiting in real time, and it's consolidating that count across multiple entrances. So let's say you have a room or a floor or a building. We're able to scale across your real estate with these proprietary sensors that we've done. And it's accurate, it's anonymous, and it's real time. And we'll talk about why that matters in a little bit. Some of our customers, like I said, we span a lot of different industries, but the kind of overarching theme is this drive to manage large amounts of real estate and value the employee experience, or in the case of universities, the campus experience, and really understanding how to straddle the line between both experiences that are positive and being efficient and not spending on expenses where you don't need to. And so there's this balancing act. And so when we think about what's happening now with real estate, whether you're managing campus, workplace, really what's happening is that there's this shift to make a holistic experience across these three areas. And so we have security and safety, which I have almost here as like a hierarchy of need. The most basic understanding of any building has to be secure and safe. And then we move on to the energy and operational efficiency. That could be both on the energy side, but also could be about real estate, being efficient about how much lease you're taking on and the square footage accordingly, and being efficient in terms of managing how much real estate you have. And then in terms of planning, right? So that goes all into that second bucket there. And then the services and amenities, those sometimes feel like the cherry on top, but they really are an integral part of these facilities. So we're seeing today that when you're wherever you are in the organization, you're trying to either come in on the security and safety level, energy and operational efficiency, or services and amenities. And those three kind of quadrants are ones that accurate people count is able to enable, because it's able to really understand where are people in a building. And it allows you to make all sorts of decisions once you know where people are and how they're using your facility, right? And so what I would invite you to do is, as you're thinking about this presentation, think about your own organization. And I'm going to show you a demo that's going to go through some of the challenges that we solve with different clients, but really think about what are the things that you can solve at your own organization if you knew how many people were in different parts of your facility at any given point throughout the day over time. So what we're going to do now is we're going to jump in. I'm going to change screens here, and we're going to jump in to some of our analytics demo. And I'm going to share with you a few screens. And what I really want to accomplish here is to help you understand some of the metrics that are derived from these sensors and how they can help with some decisions. So let's start with a building level view of an office. So some of the things that we can glean is we can see, okay, well, there are two different floors and they have a certain number of square feet, and there's a certain number of square foot per person, meaning because people are using the space in different degrees, we know that, okay, the first floor has a lot less people. It has a lot more square foot per person. And that can help us make types of decisions around, do I want to renew this lease? Do I want to change how these floors are configured? These are the type of data points that you can start to do in a workplace, right? Also in a workplace, you can start to really understand, okay, how are some of these different floors in comparison used, and really see at a high level where there are areas for improvement. And then you can look even things like conference rooms. Conference rooms are a hot topic right now. You can scan and see very quickly how each of these spaces are being used. And that in general, you can see that meeting rooms are overall being used by not many people. And that's something we see across our workplace clients. About 30% of the time, conference rooms are being used only by just a few people or one person. So these are the type of metrics you can imagine that then you can go to the organization, you can talk to the CFO, you can go to the workplace planning team and say, okay, well, we can think differently about how we're allocating space, and we have the intelligence to do so. But that's just a sneak peek at that. So I would love to just dive in now that we've kind of seen what's possible in terms of utilization square foot. We're going to look at all of these different spaces in an office, right? So we're going to say here, imagine that you have all of these different spaces and different teams assigned. Now we're looking at the available capacity here, meaning on a typical day, at every day, how much space was actually left over, how much was available that wasn't being used. And we see here some interesting trends. We see that at its peak, meaning when it's most used, it's only being used 70% of the time. On average, across all these spaces, less than half. And we also see that if we were to kind of think about this from the energy efficiency, but also from the lease efficiency in terms of square footage, we can unlock a lot of savings by thinking about where we have extra space or space that's not used. Now, I want you to just think about your own organization. If you're a workplace, there's a lot of conversations right now that are happening in terms of open office seating, hoteling, and there's a lot of drive to really put a stake in the ground as an organization to know how you're making those decisions beyond guesswork and politics. And so this is the type of data that can help you do that. It can help you paint a picture of how each of these spaces are used so that you have the data to move forward. And it's real time, it's ongoing. So as these things change over time, you're always tracking them with these sensors. So what's really different, I think, about our dashboard is the ability that moment to moment, at any given time, you can look at how was your space being used and compare, as I was showing before, each of those spaces. So let's say I wanted to go, I'm going to go into analytics. Analytics was what I was showing you there. I can look at a building level view, all of these different level views, or I can just go right into a different summary or with save reports and share them. So if I wanted if I was a university and I wanted to look across my campus, I could look with granularity about how each of these buildings were being used at any given day over any given period of time. And so, some of the things that I really want to highlight here is that when you start to think about the metrics that matter, they really can help you shape different decisions. You can see occupancy, like how many people actually came in at peak. You can see how it was used versus, which is really about comparing occupancy to that capacity. Or you could just see how many people came in over the period of time or left. So you can look at and drill down at all of these to make those decisions. And I'm talking a lot about strategic space planning decisions, but there's so much more that can happen once you know how many people are in your space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually switch over here. I'm going to show you, first off, the live kind of way that we think about this, that every single moment you're able to see how many people are entering and exiting a space. And this is just more of an illustration that at any given time, this is just someone leaving, someone entering, and that's how real time it is. And that's a real differentiation for us because we're privacy forward. We also are able to collect all of this in real time so that you can slice and dice the data in any way you want. So I want to switch now to a different use case. As I mentioned before, there's safety and security. So we have this dashboard here around tailgating. And tailgating, I'm switching to this. Once you know how many people are on the building level or on the floor level, you can see things like security issues. So we have an integration with an access control, and we could say how many people tailgated into the building that didn't badge in. So it may sound like a completely different product than I'm about to share with you, but no, it's really once you know in real time how many people are in the building or the floor or every room, you can also have a security use case of actually preventing when someone badges in and someone follows behind them. That's a security potential breach and a risk. And you can also learn about that in our dashboard. So you can see here that on this Tuesday, very recently, we have 42 entrances and 8 incidents of someone tailgating in. So once you have that type of data, the safety and security team can start to really understand, do we have an issue here and what can we do in terms of safety and security if that's your team. You can also use this type of data, as I was saying, for facilities. So I'm just going to show you here. I'm going to switch back here. If we are looking at different spaces, right, and we're looking at different allocation, let's say even if you're a university or anything like that, you can set an alert so that when there's a certain capacity reached, maybe you send someone to clean the area or patrol the area, or maybe you even can send a text alert that an area is now quiet, so it should be available to use. So I would invite you to really think about your own organization and what you could unlock once you know how people are using your space. And so I've shown you a lot of different kind of tools and dashboards. What's important to remember, whether it's setting a real-time text alert or doing a different dashboard, is that you want to be able to find the data that's most suitable for your organization so that you can make some of those decisions and move the needle internally. So I'm going to summarize with some of the different things I spoke about just now. We have one moment. Sorry, I switched a few slides. Just to review, we talked about the occupant experience, that once you know how places are used, you can allocate space accordingly or meet those needs in real time. You can drive more efficient operations, so you can see how maybe a building needs a different startup time, or you can change how the cafe is run based on how many people are using it and change how you're ordering food. These are all things we've had our customers do. You can drive growth, so you can plan accordingly based on the headcount that's growing or shrinking and create standards for that. And you can also, from a security and life safety, I was talking about tailgating, but in the course of evacuation, you can see where are people and how to evacuate accordingly. So there's a lot that really, that people count, the simple act of knowing how many people are in a space unlocks. And I'm just going to share with you a little bit more in depth 2 of these use cases. So one is this idea of consolidating space. So we've had one of our clients here. They were able to really compare and identify all of their worst performing spaces and their best performing spaces in their portfolio. We've had this done too with universities when they were trying to understand their library usage and make that data available. And they were trying to really understand how can we make objective decisions based on how each of these spaces were being used. Another thing that's really that I've touched on, but I just want to highlight explicitly, is the idea of that as you're growing, you need to know how you're using your space and create effective standards for those growth. So you can know how many square foot per person and things like that. And I'll just say one more thing about the higher ed space, because we have a couple people on the phone from there. I would invite you to actually check out what we've done. We've done some really cool things with Notre Dame, and it's on our website, and we'll follow up with that. But what we've done with them is they've been able to see how they're using each of their different dining halls, how they're using their libraries, and it helps from the actual organization. But also universities can give that to students so they can see, okay, where's the cafe that's least busy that I can go to right now and check right from the mobile phone. So all of that's possible, and all of that's something that we've done that we've really been excited about. Now, I'm going to now just kind of touch on, before I take your questions over the last couple minutes here, I know I'm throwing a lot at you, is this idea of how we actually collect the data. And this is really, I think, as a density team member, some of the things that we're most proud of. Density is not a camera, so it's not collecting any person identifiable information. It's actually scanning the area with infrared light, and as people are entering and exiting, it's removing all of the noise, all of the non-human objects, and just counting using very complex AI to say, okay, 2 people have just crossed that red threshold, and 2 people have left the building, now 3, and it's constantly doing that across different locations. So that's really the magic behind it all, is to be able to have that real-time and accurate and anonymous data. So I do want to also touch on, I think it's kind of a good thing to know, and how this is kind of working. There's a lot of different ways that you can get some sort of data on how buildings are used. But in actuality, humans do a lot of very difficult to measure things, very strange things as they're using buildings, right? They walk in different directions. They use different, they bring suitcases, they carry trash bags. All these things are accounted for in our system so that we're able to have that accurate count. So whereas there's a lot of sensors out there, there's a lot of almost different types of solutions that go into some sort of idea of tracking people, we really believe that our differentiated approach is being able to do that in real time accurately. And here's a couple of things about density. I mentioned the privacy, the security, the accuracy, and the real time availability. So as we're installed with these units, I'll just say, as you can see here on that illustration on the right, those are 2 different doorways with density sensors installed. So if you have multiple doors, the devices will be able to consolidate and group together just a single space for that count. Or if you want to put these on the doorway to a building, similarly, it can help consolidate and understand how many people are in the building overall. And so you can really track the flow and accurately understand foot traffic. So I'm going to take some of your questions. I know there's a lot of different questions that might come up, and some may be very unique to your organization. So whatever we don't get to today, please feel free to reach out. It's a new frontier for everyone. And it looks like we have already a few. Okay. So the first is, do we offer a mobile application? That's a great question. We do. And what I was mentioning before was that all of the data that we were looking at, where you could see how many people are in a space right now or over time, that's all offered on a mobile application. And what that means is that you can restrict that access or provide that access to as many people in your organization as you want. So you could see, okay, the employees could see where an open room is or open floor, or they could see how busy the cafeteria is. That same data could be used by a facility staff to know where to clean and when, based on use patterns. The mobile is really, really cool. And we've had people who really are just surprised by how real time it really is, and how robust it is across a whole campus. Okay, how do some university clients use the system? I will touch on a few use cases. One I've mentioned a lot is around space planning. Number 2 is to help their students save time, so they can know which dining room to go to without walking across the whole campus, or which floor of the library is available. Those are really important use cases, because a college wouldn't be anything without its campus experience. And so just by knowing where people are in a campus, they can have that real big impact. And we've actually worked with, as I was saying, there was Notre Dame, NYU, St. John's, a lot of universities are now building and streaming in the density data into their own mobile apps, and sharing it for a security use case as well, so that they can restrict that access or use it when they're trying to do things like plan for evacuations or emergency situations. So again, it's a great tool for a campus level use case. Okay. So we have a question around accurate head count and double counting. So yeah, I'll just answer that. So the cool thing about humans is that we all have heads, and we all can't walk through walls. So the system is really based on those two premises. The density sensor is always looking for depth readings, like topographical maps of people, of heads and shoulders. It's doing an imprint basically and looking for that signature of depth, almost like a sonar. So as people enter and exit a threshold, then they are counted and the count is consolidated for that moment in time. So you have, at any given point of time, how many people were in this space versus another. And so as humans move throughout the building, the spaces will change in terms of count to consolidate for their movement. But it is totally anonymous. And so that's a way that you're not actually having to track the individual in that way. Great question here from Nathan. Thanks, Nathan. Do universities or schools put the sensors in classrooms, or are they focused only on large shared spaces? Great question. Yes, they do put them in classrooms for a couple reasons. Number one is you get accurate attendance data, of course. And number two, they also, once you have all of that attendance data very quickly, when you already have that installed, you can figure out how to allocate different classrooms to different classes. And they also have it in specifically classrooms we've worked with that are used in the point of evacuation to also know that there are certain rooms that are available, and that they will show rooms that are available in the point of evacuation or classrooms during the point when it's needed the most. So it really depends on if you guys are trying to understand how are different classrooms used or shared spaces. Totally, it's a total use case. We've had churches use it for their Sunday schools. You are the master of kind of what data is going to be helpful in your organization. So it's us to enable you to kind of get the data and then make that change internally or drive for action. For a public school, how would you feel it benefits us the most? So for a public school, I would say, here's where I would start. I'll break it down. First of all, you would want to put these on the entrances to the school itself. If it's a main building, you'd want to put them on the perimeter of the building. Why? Because just by those doorways alone, you would understand how many students are there at any given time. And you could start to really understand how, in the case of an emergency, you get a total count of the building. And then I would put them into the cafes. The reason why is also during the point of evacuation, and you need to know where the student's located, but also for some of the operations. So you can see really where the students at any given time, and that's a very important security feature, as well as it helps with the operation. You could put them in classrooms as well. We've had schools use them to know which rooms weren't really being used, so they didn't have to clean, or to know, in real time, where are all of the students, without having to invade any of their privacy, totally anonymous. So it's up to you in your organization. If there's security use cases, there's operational use cases, and really it's about, you should be able to know if you have real estate, how your real estate is being used and where people are without having to know all of their personally identified information. All right, so great question. So say there's 1,000 people in your organization, and there's an emergency evacuation at 97% accuracy. Would your system potentially show there are 30 people still in the building? So this is a great question, and I'll explain kind of how we think about accuracy. So what we do is, first of all, we have the most accurate people counting technology that there is. And the reason why is because I can tell you about kind of the differentiated approaches, right? There's cameras, there's IR brake beam sensors, and there's types of sensors that you can put under the seat. But what we're doing differently is we're constantly scanning an area underneath the doorway, and we have algorithms that are looking for heads and shoulders. So if you care about accuracy, you come to the right place. We are kind of the gold standard in that way, and it's been a big road to get here. We do accuracy reports for every location. So if you're concerned about what does 97% actually mean, we'll run an audit to know where are all of the locations and give an accuracy report. And we've actually, because we're using machine learning, it also could start at 97% in the sense that, if there are ever anomalies, we can address them. So we've had, like, on cafes, for example, when we first installed there, everyone was carrying around plates. And so those plates, that during the first week were tricking the sensor into thinking they were a different depth. And then the algorithm was quickly able to learn that plates were different than heads, and it evolved over time. So all the cool, and to get to 100% accuracy. So all the advances that are going into things like self-driving cars and all that technology of depth sensing is now being applied to a threshold or an area in a building. So again, if you care about accuracy, that's where the place to come to. And thanks for that question. Okay, so it looks like we are all out of both time and questions, but please reach out to us, and don't hesitate to ask any other questions or think about this in your own organization. We know that sensors and this type of technology are changing industries, but it's definitely in the beginning phases of some different organizations. So we want to help. As you're evaluating whether you need this type of technology, whether you don't, where's the value really, and how you can be saving dollars or protecting people, we're happy to partner with you and really scope that out as you're thinking about this. Thank you so much for taking your time today to join us, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.